Hi, and welcome to the 10-minute video summary of the message that was shared on the 8th of January 2017 at Henrietta Christian Fellowship. My name is Don Bold. I'm the pastor at the church, and for the next 10 minutes, I'd like to just share with you the highlights of this morning's message. We're in a series that I have no idea how long it's going to last. It could last a long time, and it's just all about seeing Jesus and about the things that happen in us and through us when we see Jesus. All right, we talked about his birth and how there was things revealed about Jesus. Jesus wasn't speaking. Jesus wasn't teaching. Jesus hadn't done anything yet. He'd just been born, and already there was things that we were learning. There was things that we had the potential to receive and be changed by, and it was just in his birth. And this week I just want to take a little time and talk about this whole idea of seeing Jesus. All right, because there's a lot of people in the Scripture who wanted to see Jesus. I think about Philip when he tells Nathanael that he's found the Messiah, and Nathanael says, "Well, who is it?" And he says, "Well, it's Jesus of Nazareth." And Nathanael says, "Well, can any good thing come from Nazareth?" And Philip's response is, "Come and see." All right, it was not some teaching or doctrine. He said, "Come and see. I want you to see the reality of all this." And when he sees Jesus, his faith is opened up, and Jesus eventually says to him that you're going to see greater things than these. All right, and Herod. I think about King Herod. Herod wanted to see Jesus. He had beheaded John in prison, and now he's hearing about even greater works being manifested in this man Jesus. And it says he kept wanting to see him. And so, at the time of Jesus' crucifixion, as he's going through this period of trial, at some point Pilate sends Jesus to Herod, and it says Herod was glad to see him, but he was glad to see him for the wrong reasons. He was hoping to see a sign performed by him, and so Herod doesn't really benefit from the interaction. All right, but then we have this man Zacchaeus. And Zacchaeus is he's an interesting person in Scripture. And let me just read a little bit of this to you, and then we'll talk about it, okay? Because Zacchaeus was curious, okay? Luke 19, 1 through 10. He, meaning Jesus, entered Jericho and was passing through. And there was a man called by the name of Zacchaeus. And he was a chief tax collector, and he was rich. All right, he was rich probably because he was cheating people, okay? So Zacchaeus was trying to see who Jesus was. The only quality that sets him apart in any way that would make him admirable is he wants to see Jesus. And he was unable because of the crowd, for he was small in stature, so he ran on ahead, climbed up into a sycamore tree in order to see him. Now, lest you get glorious pictures as an American of this giant sycamore tree, it was a sycamore tree, it was some sort of fig-type tree, it was a large shrub, basically. And so, when he climbs up in this tree, he's not that high up. Okay, so when Jesus comes underneath him here in just a moment, it says, for Jesus was about to pass that way. When Jesus came to the place, he looked up and he said to him, "Zacchaeus, hurry, come down, for today I must stay at your house." Now, we get this picture of this faraway kind of thing. No, I mean, Zacchaeus was probably like just a few feet away from him in this tree. I'm going to guess he probably wasn't even the only person who climbed a tree that day to see Jesus. But Jesus sees this one and recognizes something about Zacchaeus. And I think what he recognized about him, this is something that I see when I read this story, is that Jesus looked around and he saw somebody who really needed to see Jesus today. He was curious enough to climb that tree, but there was something in Zacchaeus that was about to be tapped into by Jesus. And Jesus thought, I'm going to choose this unlikely person. Now, the response of the crowd was pretty predictable. And he hurried and came down and received him gladly. When the crowd saw it, they all began to grumble, saying, "He has gone to be the guest of a man who is a sinner." All right, and Zacchaeus, he stopped and said to the Lord, "Behold, Lord, half of my possessions I will give to the poor, and if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will give back 4 times as much." And Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house." Zacchaeus was the person in town who needed to see Jesus most. And when he made the effort to see him, Jesus rewarded it by coming to him and spending this time with him. And we know he invited his other sinful friends. And Jesus comes and sits among them. But the crowd grumbles. They wanted him to come see them. They were the good people. But the parable of the shepherd tells us that the shepherd will leave the 99 good sheep that didn't go astray in order to seek the one that did. And so, that desire to reach out to the person who needs to see Jesus most. That's what Jesus is. That's what I see in Jesus in this picture. All right, so what does it mean to see Jesus? Hebrews 2:9 tells us that we see him. We see him who is made a little lower than the angels, namely Jesus. And so what's it talking about? I think what it's talking about is that when we believe, when we hear, we see. Faith has sight. That there is a picture generating ability in our hearts where we can see things, as imagery in our hearts, all right, that inform us, almost without words, just to be able to see him, and you think, wait a minute, he's walking through Jericho, the sinner gets up in a tree, wants to see him, and he responds to him by saying, I'm going to come and spend my day with you. And behold, I stand at the door and knock, and if anybody opens that door to me, I'll come in and sup with them. All right, and that's what he's saying in this context. And so, when we see Jesus manifested in life, in the people around us, when people see that in us, we see Jesus. All right, and 2 Corinthians 4:5-7 says, we do not preach ourselves, but Christ Jesus the Lord, and ourselves as your bondservants for Jesus' sake. God, who said, light shall shine out of darkness, is the one who has shown in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Christ. And the face of Christ, in the person of Jesus. All right, that there are things that we learn. There's things that we receive just by looking and seeing with a heart filled with faith, and faith has sight. And, I'm just going to get my reading glasses here because there's a part of my notes that's it's a little smaller. And what I want you to understand is that, what do we see? We see his nature. We see his attributes. Okay, we see his moral character. And, there's a statement in Barnes' Notes on the New Testament that says this: if the glory of the divine character is seen at all, it will be seen in and through him. And so seeing, God and who he is by seeing Jesus and seeing how it is that he lived, we know there's a day coming when we will see him with these eyes. We'll see him as is. I know that Job reflected on this prophetically when he said, I know that my Redeemer lives, and that I will see him. On this earth, with these eyes, I will see him. And so we know there's a day coming when we will see him. So they saw him. Okay, we see him through faith that has sight, and there's a day coming when we will see him face to face. And in 1 John 3:2 says that we will see him just as he is. All right, and so in the Spirit, we need to keep squinting. Why do we squint? We squint when we want to see something better than we're seeing it. Sometimes it's something that's far off. Sometimes it's something that's close and small. But we squint because we want to see. It's an indication that we desire to see. If I look at you and I squint, it's because I'm trying to see you better. All right. And so 2 Corinthians 3:17-18 says this: now the Lord is that Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. But we all, with unveiled face, beholding as in a mirror the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image. We are transformed as we look. All right, we are transformed. But it says we're looking as through a mirror, and the mirrors that they're using are not like the mirrors we have. If you've ever tried to look at yourself in a cheap mirror, sometimes you have to kind of maneuver it a little bit. And so it's saying that that really. Sometimes you got to squint. Sometimes you got to try, to see the things that you're supposed to see. That's how it is when you look in a mirror back in those days. And so, we know that there is a time in the future. And, Paul talks about this, and he said that I fought the good fight. He said, I have finished my course. I've kept the faith. And in the future is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day. But listen to this: not only to me, but also to all who have loved his appearing. What does it mean to love his appearing? You want to see him. That's what it is. You look forward to seeing him. And so when you love somebody's appearing, we use the eyes that faith gives to us, and we see Jesus. And we're transformed by this. And it will reward us, for that pursuit. And so as we continue to unfold what Jesus showed us in himself, squint a little. Don't be afraid to squint a little bit and really try to get all that you can from these pictures that the Scriptures give us, where there's not a lot of teaching to them other than what we get by seeing. There's always so much more to see when we open our hearts to see and to be transformed by what we see in Jesus. And with that, I'm going to say God bless you. We'll see you next time on the 10-Minute Video Summary.